When you think of Ireland, you can't help but think of castles, castle ruins, restored castles, castle hotels, romantic castles, haunted castles, defensive castles. The list goes on and on. With thousands of castles scattered across Ireland, choosing the ones to add to your itinerary can feel a little bit overwhelming. So today I am sharing 10 of my favorite castles in Ireland and why they stand out. I'm going to begin with the castle ruin. This is actually what you're going to see the most of across Ireland, but I think that probably the most dramatic castle ruin has to be the Rock of Dunamace. The history of this site stretches back to the Irish kings of Laois, and the first fortification was built in the 9th century. The ruin that stands today on top of this huge basalt rock in the middle of the countryside was destroyed in a 1650 invasion during the time of Cromwell. So Cromwell was basically flattening as much of Ireland as he could. The thing that makes this ruin so atmospheric to me, and this may sound a little woo-woo, but I really feel like this is one of those thin places in Ireland, a very powerful spot. Because on top of that big rocky outcropping, you can see for miles, which made it a very strategic location to own, to have your seat, to be able to see what was coming at you. And you can really still feel that when you're there. The Rock of Dunamace is managed by the OPW, but it's an unguided site. So it is absolutely free to visit. There is rarely anybody there. I can count on one hand the number of times I have run into other people at this site. So it's, you approach it through the farmland, you're on teeny tiny roads, you might run into a tractor. Well, not run into it, but you know what I mean. Farmers on the roads and things like that. So it's not difficult to visit. It's very close to Dublin. A terrific spot if you're traveling on your way to Kilkenny. But it's just one of those places that people don't often veer off the larger roads to get to. So the Rock of Dunamace, absolutely terrific, and my choice for the castle ruin. Moving on to the fairy tale castle. For this, I actually choose Malahide Castle, which is just 10 minutes from Dublin Airport. I think that this castle has about everything you can think of to recommend it. Again, it's 10 minutes from Dublin Airport, so it makes a terrific first stop if you arrive in the morning and, about 9, 10 o'clock when it opens. You can go, you can enjoy the grounds, the open grounds before the castle itself opens. It's a great place to get out and stretch, kind of shake off that long flight. And then once the Avoca opens, you can enjoy a really great meal. You can stay and do a tour of the castle. The docents there are phenomenal. They are such great storytellers. And then you have the paid gardens that are kind of behind the castle. So you have a walled garden and a fairy trail and a butterfly house and just some beautiful areas back behind Malahide Castle as well. So it really is a terrific spot for anybody coming in or out of Dublin. And if you're staying in Dublin and you don't have a car, it's very, very easy to reach from Dublin city center by bus or DART. It's about 30 minutes. So it makes a perfect half-day trip from Dublin city center. You can purchase tickets for the castle tours online. I do recommend, especially in the busier season, like May through September, if you want to do a castle tour, I really recommend pre-booking that castle tour. But again, there's a huge swath of the grounds that are free. And then the paid gardens behind, you usually don't have to pre-book for those unless there is an event going on. So do check your dates, see what events might be happening and whether or not you should be pre-booking for Malahide Castle. Moving on to the Irish Tower House. This is actually the castle that you're going to see the most in Ireland, and it's a four-story, straight up and down tower house. These were built for control and power of an area. They were often relatively close together just because, it still took you a while to get between them by horseback or walking if you had to do that. So these were built for strategy and control. I think that the best tower house experience you can have in Ireland is at Bunratty Castle and Folk Park. This is on the west coast of Ireland, about 10 minutes from Shannon Airport, and it is the most completely restored Irish tower house in the country. You can explore from dungeon to battlement. So, take a look at what's below and then climb all the way to the top, survey the grounds around you, lord of the castle, right? But it's just a really, really terrific castle to visit and explore. Bunratty Castle is surrounded by a 26-acre folk park. And this is a great spot if you want a terrific walkthrough of Irish history because they have brought houses from all across the country, all different types of housing that you would have found through the years. You have the fisherman's house, the farmhouse, the laborer's house, all the way up to like the manor house of the larger landowner. So you really can walk through history at this folk park. It's kind of like a living history museum where people are in costume. You're going to be able to talk to them. There's a little village that you can walk through and see the school and the post office and go into the pub and things like that. So I really think that Bunratty is a wonderful experience to have if you are in that area. Bunratty is probably most well known for the medieval banquets. They do the medieval banquets all year round at Bunratty Castle. This is actually the only place that you're going to find the medieval banquets running all year round in the country. There is one other spot that does them, and that is Napogue Castle, which is actually just a wee bit to the north of Bunratty, but they only do their medieval banquets from April through October. So you can purchase your tickets online or at the gate for the castle and folk park. But if you want to enjoy the medieval banquet, I highly recommend booking those online the minute you know the date that you're going to be there or the date that you want, because those tickets do sell out. Coach tours, coach companies will purchase those in bulk and then, release them if they don't need them. But you're always better off with Bunratty Medieval Banquet to purchase those in advance with as much notice as possible. Next up, we have what I call Ireland's only palace, and that is Kilkenny Castle. So most Irish castles are either fortified tower houses or they were defensive military structures. Kilkenny Castle, it may have started its life as a defensive castle, but over the years, it was redesigned over and over and over again. And now it has the feeling of being an aristocratic residence meant to display like the wealth and the status of the owners. This castle was the seat of the Butler family. So these were the earls and later the dukes of Ormond. And for 600 years, this was the center of their holdings. So the long ownership of one family allowed the castle to be continually modernized and expanded, and it moved it away from that military fortress closer to that palatial residence that we think of when we think of a castle. So you're going to see in there the grand reception rooms, elaborate plasterwork ceilings, large windows overlooking the parkland, and formal gardens at one end. So much more typical of that European palace as opposed to the medieval castle that you're going to see in so many other places. Kilkenny Castle also sits on 50-ish acres of parkland. It's right in the middle of Kilkenny City. So you have large garden views, a formal approach, and on beautiful days, that parkland is just covered with people sitting out and enjoying the sun, maybe having a picnic, kicking a ball around, practicing hurling. It really is kind of the center of life in Kilkenny still in that way. Kilkenny Castle is an OPW managed castle, so you can purchase tickets on site. I've never really noticed the need to pre-purchase tickets for Kilkenny Castle. So you can just walk up, get your tickets, or use your OPW Heritage card to visit. From that palace, we're going to move on to the Norman Castle. So this is the big, huge, sprawling, fortified castles that you're probably more used to seeing in England. Now, obviously, England had total control over Ireland until the early 20th century. And to keep that control, they came in and they built their massive structures, huge stone walls, towering battlements, all just huge, massive structures. And Cahir Castle in County Tipperary is the second largest Norman castle in Ireland. I say this is often my favorite castle. I love how well preserved and restored it is. And being situated on the River Suir, it is completely photo worthy. Has a wonderful little island almost behind it. And it's such a terrific spot. The history of this castle is really incredible. They do a terrific tour that is included with your entrance. I highly recommend taking advantage of that. If you're willing to go down the steps and below, you can get into a part of the dungeons, and then you can climb. It's almost straight up, out and around, and up to the top of a tower that overlooks the river. It has a great portcullis that you can stand beneath. It's a terrific photo op, and you can explore the castle freely. So it's a great spot to spend a couple of hours really poking into nooks and crannies, looking at that massive chain that that holds the portcullis in place and kind of getting that inner workings of a large defensive castle. When you visit, you want to be sure to look for the cannonballs in the walls. People usually find one, but there are a few more. What makes Cahir Castle so special to me is that so many people pass it by as they're too busy kind of hurrying between the Rock of Cashel and Blarney Castle. So they'll go by it, they'll look out the window, they'll see it, but they don't stop. So there is rarely a crowd at Cahir Castle. In fact, in all my years of visiting, I have only ever seen one tour bus there. Cahir Castle is an OPW heritage site. No advance booking is necessary at this time. And again, I highly recommend slowing down for this castle. We are now moving on to the haunted castle. I don't feel like you can talk about ancient buildings without talking about at least one being haunted. And I probably should have mentioned it. Malahide Castle also is said to have a couple of resident ghosts. But Leap Castle in County Offaly is all about kind of that darker side of Ireland's history. It is not a grand castle. It is an Irish tower house, but it is fascinating. It's often called the most haunted building in Ireland. It was built in the late 15th century, and according to legend, a priest was murdered there during a power struggle. So it gave the chapel of the castle, the Bloody Chapel, its ominous name. During the 20th century restoration, workers reportedly found a hidden dungeon filled with human remains. This castle is privately owned and lived in by Sean Ryan, who is a musician, and he's done most of the restoration to this castle. Guided tours are sometimes offered, but they are by appointment only when Sean is available. So you can't just rock up and visit Leap Castle. You have to contact Sean. You have to make an appointment and arrange everything in advance. And now we're on to the dramatic castle, the castle that just the view and the way it sits just is awe-inspiring. And for that, I choose Dunluce Castle on the Causeway Coast. Now, for Game of Thrones fans, this was Pike castle. And this dramatic ruin sits at the cliff's edge. Both paid guided tours of the keep as well as the areas below that you can explore somewhat freely. There are spots that you just cannot go. They are too dangerous. They are well marked. So you do have to climb some steps, and there are areas that may not be suitable if you have young children or have some mobility issues. The visitor center is filled with castle history and interactive displays. So it's a wonderful castle to visit. But in my opinion, I really think it's the dramatic situation of the castle that makes this worth seeing. So you have two really incredible views of the castle on the approach from either direction. The first is as you come around the bend in the road from the east. The castle, when you come around this curve, it's immediately in front of you and absolutely stunning. And in fact, if you aren't ready for it, it is going to catch you off guard because you literally come around a corner and it's in front of you. Every time I take people around that curve, just the gasps. So if you want pictures from that angle, you're probably actually going to need to turn around and come back because it does literally just appear before you and there is no pull off on that approach. So, but it's a stunning view. The second is at the Megara Cross viewpoint, which is just to the west of the castle. Ample parking here, and the viewpoints over the edge of the North Atlantic cliffs are dramatic all on their own. Looking back toward the east, you are going to be able to see Dunluce Castle from a different angle, sitting on top of the cliff. Really a stunning view, a beautiful picture. But you do need to be prepared when you visit this viewpoint for cold winds, even on a nice day. I don't think I've ever stood on that viewpoint and not just been buffeted by winds. So again, beautiful spot. I think that this castle is best seen from a distance to get that dramatic feel, but don't put off the visit if you are interested in touring this spot. Next, we're going into the final three, and these are hotels. I am sharing three of my favorites today. The first one is the luxury stay, and the title for this has to go to Ashford Castle. It wins Best Hotel in Ireland year over year over year. And if you were following House of Guinness, this is the castle the Guinness family owned in County Mayo. Absolutely stunning. Really feels like a fairy tale. At Ashford Castle, you have plenty of on-site activities to keep you busy. There's golf, equestrian, falconry, boat tours on Loch Corrib, gardens to wander, just literally almost anything you can think of to do on an estate or at a resort, you can do at Ashford Castle. You also have plenty of dining options on site, including an exceptionally fancy afternoon tea, which I would highly recommend pre-booking. Now, Ashford Castle is a destination on its own. It's not really someplace to say I'm going to base here and tour out of because number one, it is expensive. And number two, there's so much to do and experience. Why would you leave? So I usually say if you can afford it, stay 2 nights at Ashford Castle because one is not enough. I learned that the hard way. So stay 2 nights if you can and really just stay on the estate and absorb and experience everything they offer. It's important to note that there is no access to the estate without a reservation of some sort. This is the only castle that I can think of that you actually will pass through a castle gate that is manned, and they check your name off a list when you go through. So you have to have some reason to be there, or you're not going to get access to the estate, at least through that gatehouse. My choice for a pampering and relaxing castle stay would have to be Loch Esk Castle in County Donegal. It's probably, yeah, it ranks up there for me with Ashford. Again, very luxurious, beautiful grounds, but it doesn't have all the activities. Really, the reason you go to Loch Esk is for the relaxation, the beauty, and their amazing spa. Now, that said, Loch Esk Castle is easy to tour away from. The Schlevelig Cliffs and Glencalm Kill make a terrific day trip out from Loch Esk Castle. So it is one that you could stay at, do a little touring, and also enjoy the castle just because there's not the dozens of things to keep you on site. The rooms at Loch Esk I have found to be very spacious, incredibly well appointed, and honestly, some of the nicest bathrooms that I've enjoyed during my travels through Ireland. It's also one of the few castle hotels that has interconnecting rooms, which is a huge plus for families. You have a couple of dining options when you are at Loch Esk. There is the Cedars restaurant on site, as well as dining in their on site pub, and they do offer a very nice afternoon tea as well. And finally, wrapping it up with the most authentic feeling castle hotel that I've experienced. And for that, I choose Kennedy Castle. We're back in County Offaly. I love this castle because number one, it's very affordable as far as castle hotels go. And the rooms have a very authentic feel to them, especially the baronial rooms at the top of the castle with their exposed stone and wood. It just it actually feels like you are staying in a castle where you've been invited by the lord and lady and you are experiencing their hospitality. It doesn't have the five-star makeover that you find in so many castle hotels. This is another spot where you come for a relaxed and unhurried stay. There's no spa, and the on-site activities are few. You have horseback riding, archery, and tennis. You're also in the Schliebblum Mountains, so hill walking is a really popular pastime here. This is another place where you can tour away from it. You're actually not too far from Burr Castle and Gardens, which is another one of my favorite spots. You are also near to the Lochborough Parklands and not too far from Leap Castle if you have an appointment down there. There is a ferry trail on at Kennedy Castle that is really amusing, even if you aren't traveling with children. And the meals are very good. I really recommend the dungeon for at least one meal. The library bar, I think, is a terrific spot to sit by the fire and enjoy a drink and a book or a chat with friends. And probably one of the most important points about Kennedy Castle, there is no elevator. So I really recommend only bringing in what you absolutely need because you don't want to haul large suitcases up to the top floors. Trust me, I've done it once. And the second time I went back, we condensed for the night. So either condense your luggage, take in only what you need, or request a ground floor or low floor room if you don't want to climb 3 flights of steps. No matter what kind of travel you enjoy or the type of transportation you're using, you're going to find plenty of castles that fit easily into your trip. There are more than 30,000 castles and ruins scattered across Ireland, so the real challenge isn't finding them, it's deciding which ones make sense for your route and the time you have. And that's exactly the kind of planning the Ireland Travel Compass was designed to help with. It brings attractions and accommodations together geographically and helps you see what fits well together, making it easier to build an itinerary that works for your trip. And if you'd like a simple way to start thinking about your own itinerary, I've created a video that walks you through my trip framework, a straightforward way to avoid the most common Ireland vacation planning mistakes and build a trip that feels manageable and enjoyable for you. Just visit IrelandFamilyVacations.com/trip, TRIP. No matter how you choose to enjoy Ireland, castles have a way of connecting you to the country's history, its stories, and sometimes even its legends. With so many scattered across the island, chances are you're going to find one or several that fit perfectly into your trip.